Former NBA player Chris Herren came to East Greenwich High School on Friday to talk about his experiences with drug abuse. It was a tough hour.
When I got the Nuggets, I had guys like Chauncey Billups, Nick Van Exel, Antonio McDyess who pulled me aside. And they said, Christopher, we've seen your story on 60 Minutes, Rolling Stone magazine. We know who you are. It's not happening here. We've taken alcohol off the plane because of you. There is no drinking and smoking on this team. When we go on road trips, you will not leave the hotel unless you're with one of us. If you leave the hotel, you're not going to order alcohol. We don't care that you're 22 with a wife and a baby. This window of opportunity is small, and it's our job as your teammates to make sure you take advantage of it. And with those type of friends in my life, that rookie season was a success. And when that season ended, I jumped on a plane, I moved back to Fall River, I bought a house, a couple of cars, and I started settling in with my family. And at 22 years old, I was proud of that. So I decided to throw a little high school, a little party for all my high school friends. And this kid, who I've known since I was 6 years old, who would have sat beside me in the bleachers today, he walked into my backyard and he said, Chris, come on, man, let's take a walk. So I walked around the front of my house and he said, remember we were in high school? And every once in a while, we could get our hands on Percocets and Vicodins? And I said, yeah, man, of course I remember. He said, there's this new pill. It's like taking 5 perks, 5 bites, 1 shot. He reached in his pocket and he pulled out this Ziploc bag. This Ziploc bag was filled with these little yellow pills. He looked at me and he said, these are 40 milligram OxyContin. They're $20, you want one? At 22 years old, I looked at that little Ziploc bag with those little yellow pills. I reached in my pocket, I handed him a $20 bill. He dropped that little yellow pill in the palm of my hand. And I looked at it and I laughed. I said, are you for real? 20 bucks for this thing? He said, Chris, it's strong, just try it, let me know. I threw it into my mouth and I went back to the cookout. I had no idea at 22 years old, that decision that day was about to change my life forever. I had no idea that that $20 was going to turn to $25,000 a month drug habit. $25,000 a month drug habit. I had no idea that that 40 milligram pill was going to turn to 1,600 milligrams a day. That little yellow pill in the palm of my hand would turn to 1080s in the morning and 1080s at night. I had no idea that when it was time for me to go back for my second season in the NBA, I was walking into the Denver Nuggets locker room for training camp, a full-blown junkie, because of one little yellow pill. I walked into that locker room fully strung out on OxyContin, and I promised myself I'd leave him behind. So for the first 5 days of training camp, I threw up, freezing cold, sweating, legs kicking. And after the first 5 days of detoxing, I walked into practice and my coach, Dan Issel, pulled me aside and he said, Chris, before you get ready, go into my office. What should have been my dream come true that day was a nightmare beginning. Because I knew, after 5 days off OxyContin, I was jumping right back on that plane and flying right back to him. When I hung up that phone with Rick Pitino, I didn't call my mom and dad to say, that little boy who you drove all over the country, who you watched in your driveway, I'm a Celtic, I made it. I didn't call my wife and my son to say, I can't wait to see you, Mom. I called that kid with the yellow pill. And I said, I don't know what you gave me 4 months ago, homeboy, but my body's completely shut down. I'm the newest member of the Celtics. I have a press conference scheduled at 4 o'clock tomorrow. Can you please meet me in a parking lot? When I pulled into that parking lot for my press conference, all the media were outside waiting. I got out of my car and I looked over my shoulder and there he was, that kid, who I've known since I was 6 years old, sitting in the car waiting for me. I walked into my press conference, I held my Celtics jersey. I told him it was a dream come true. Told him I can't wait to play me the Cabanas in the parquet floor. I lied the whole press conference, man. I could care less about the Boston Celtics. I could care less about the parquet floor. All I cared about that day was ending this press conference, jumping in that car, and ending my sickness. When the press conference ended, I did just that, and I never looked back. Halfway through my season, I was playing against the Los Angeles Lakers, and Shaquille O'Neal went up to block my shot. When he went up to block my shot, he missed. He landed on my shoulder and he tore my rotator cuff. That injury ended my season with the Celtics. And when that season ended, I got a phone call from the #1 team in Europe. The #1 team in Europe was from Bologna, Italy. They offered me $500,000 in cash, station to watch the movie. I parked my car inside the street and I watched this little Italian man get off the park bench and serve pies as they pulled up. And after I watched this little Italian man serve pies for about 45 minutes, I said, it's my turn. I started my nice little sports car, I pulled up, he walked up to my window. At 24 years old, I couldn't say Percocet in a town. I couldn't say OxyContin in a town. At 24 years old, all I could do was roll up my sleeve and point to my veins. As soon as I pointed to my veins, the man nodded his head yes. I kicked open his passenger side door, he sat down, and I drove away. I pulled down this little alley, he looked at me one more time, and he said, "Are you sure? Are you sure you want heroin and not cocaine?" I looked at that man at 24 years old, and I said, "I'm sick today, brother. I'm sick. I'm real sick. I need heroin." That man looked at me, he reached in his mouth, he grabbed the string that was tied to his tooth. He started pulling up the string. As he's pulling up the string, I'm seeing these little balloons come with it. When he got to the bottom of the string, he dropped it out. On that string, there were 15 balloons of black tar heroin. He said, "How many do you want?" I said, "I want all 15, I may never see you again." He snapped it off his tooth, dropped in my cup holder. He reached in his pocket, he pulled out a spoon, he pulled out a syringe, and that little Italian man started cooking heroin on my front seat. 24 years old, I never even seen a needle. 24 years old, I never been around heroin. 24 years old, that man looked at me and he said, "If you're so sick, roll up your sleeve." That man shoot me up. At 24 years old, I became an intravenous drug addict. At 24 years old, I never went back to the little yellow pills. What's amazing, 6 years earlier, I walked into a room just like you did today. And my daddy, he's a politician, my mommy, she's in corporate America. All I do is drink and smoke, don't pertain to me. 6 years later, I got a needle in my arm in an alley in Bologna, Italy, because of one little yellow pill. 3 weeks later, my coach knocked on my door. He said, "You have training camp in the mountains, pack your bags, we're going away for 10 days. I looked at that man, I shook his hand, I said, "Best of luck in the mountains, sir." I quit. You can take the $500,000 in cash. You can take the beautiful home, the 2 cars, and the school that my son is hitting in my face. 2 police officers punching me on my chest. Another police officer screaming my name over and over, reaching into my car and throwing it in the park. When he threw it in the park, my body flew forward. As soon as my body flew forward, they grabbed me by my shirt, they ripped me out and laid me down in the cement. When they laid me down in the cement in the parking lot of Dunkin' Donuts in Portsmouth, I looked up, and there was a crowd of about 20 people standing there. In that crowd, I found a police officer, and I said, "Officer, what's the problem?" He said, "Christopher, what's the problem, son? Look at your arm." I looked down to my right, and my arm was covered in blood. And there was still a needle in it. He said, "The problem is, my man, you just overdosed. We brought you back to life. But when you overdosed, you took the foot off the brake, and you hit that woman in front of you. You got a right to remain silent, Chris. Put off the ground." At 24 years old, I was charged with 2 felonies. At 24 years old, he picked me up off the ground and threw me in handcuffs. At 24 years old, he brought me to Newport Hospital and transferred me to jail. At 24 years old, I bailed out of jail 5 hours later. When I bailed out of jail, I didn't call my mom and dad to say, "Your son needs help." I didn't call my wife to say, "Keep little Chris and Sammy away from the TV because I'm all over the news." I called that man I met in the parking lot because his dope was so good, it almost killed me. That's how sick this monster is. His dope was so good, it almost killed me. So give me more. For the next 6 years, I traveled all over the country playing basketball. For the next 6 years, I traveled in 6 countries. And for the next 6 years, I popped heroin on every single corner in Beijing, Shanghai, Istanbul, Italy, Warsaw, Poland, and Tehran, Iran. And the last country I played in Warsaw, Poland, I was there for 2 months when the team called me in the office. When the team called me in the office, they said, "Chris, you're no good anymore. We're sending you home." I said, "You can send me home, but pay me my money. I've been here 2 months. I have 2 little kids at home." He said, "Christopher, the only thing we're paying you is a flight. Where do you want to go, to Green or Logan?" I said, "Neither. Send me to Fresno, California. I went to college." Because in Fresno, California, I had an old college buddy. He was a 6'6" tight end. Had a couple of tryouts in the NFL. This 6'6" tight end, he married a Fresno State cheerleader. They had 2 beautiful daughters the same age as my kids. This 6'6" tight end, he used to walk into these assemblies with me and be like, "Come on, man." Now me and the 6'6" tight end, we both have the same drug problem. Just nobody knows about his yet. So the 6'6" tight end picked me up at the airport on a brand new Range Rover. He looked at me and said, "Chris, you don't look good." I said, "I don't feel good." He said, "I figured you want to open up my little console." When I opened up the little console, half ounce of cocaine, finger of black top heroin, He said, there's needles in my glove box. You can get off right now in my car, or you can wait till you get back to my house. We pulled through his big, beautiful neighborhood. We pulled up to his house. We walked up to his front door. And when we got to the front door, the door swung open. There was this little girl. She was 22 years old. Her name was Lisa. She was the football player's personal assistant. Little Lisa took my luggage. She went in the office. Me and a football player. We went downstairs in his house. And for the next 5 days, 2 former athletes who took this as a joke sat in his basement and we speedballed. We shot heroin and cocaine for 5 days straight. 5 days straight shooting heroin and cocaine with no sleep. Paranoia starts setting in. You start thinking the cops have the house surrounded. On the last 2 days, we were locked in the bedroom waiting for them to come through the door. They never came. But my phone kept ringing. And when I answered my phone on day 5, it was my wife. My wife, 26 years old, who went to Providence College raising 2 beautiful kids. My wife said, Chris, the kids miss you. We're in Chicago right now. Pick us up at the airport in 2.5 hours in Oakland. I hung up the phone, I looked at the football player and I said, I can't do this, man. He said, Chris, you don't have a choice. Jump in the shower, grab the keys to the Range Rover and go. I jumped in the shower, I grabbed the keys to the Range Rover and I started driving. As I'm driving down the highway, I'm thinking people are following me. The paranoia is overwhelming me, so I'm taking exits and I'm waiting 20 minutes. The paranoia will settle down, I'll stop my car, I'll get back on, same thing will happen, I'll pull the Range Rover over, and I'll wait 20 minutes. After pulling over and waiting 8 hours, 5 hours late to pick up my wife and kids, I pulled that Range Rover in the breakdown lane on the highway. And at 27 years old, I dropped the keys. And at 27 years old, I waited for the next set of headlights. And at 27 years old, I timed it. As soon as I saw those headlights coming, I threw my body right in front of the car. I wanted that car going 75 miles an hour to hit me in my chest, drag me down the highway and put me out of my misery. At 27 years old, I don't want to live like this no more. At 27 years old, that man swerved. The next car coming was a woman and she stopped 3 feet in front of me. That woman jumped out of her car, she called 911. 2 minutes later, the California Highway Patrol came. California Highway Patrol came, threw me in handcuffs, brought me to the hospital, transferred me to jail. At 27 years old, I was sitting in a jail in Modesto, California, where at 10 o'clock that night, they called my name. I walked up to the window, and I walked up to the window, he said, Mr. Herren, you've been released. Here's your summons, show up to court. In 4 weeks, I'm walking to my homeboy's house, who lives about a half a mile away. I'm grabbing his gun, I'm sticking it in my mouth, and I'm blowing my head off today. Today I will kill myself. Today I will end this nightmare for everybody involved.